Welcome to This Explainer. If you've ever wondered why your newsfeed looks totally different from your neighbors, well, the answer actually traces all the way back to the 1980s. Today, we're going to explore exactly how a massive, rapid-fire technology revolution completely shattered the American television monoculture.
So let's just dive right in with a pretty huge question. How in the world did society transform from having this unified, shared media experience into the hyper-fragmented, algorithmic, niche-driven reality we live in right now? I mean, to really get it, we have to look back at the original tech disruptors.
Section 1. The Fall of the Big Three. Okay, wrap your head around this number, 90%. That represents the sheer monopoly ABC, CBS, and NBC held on the U.S. television audience from the 1950s all the way through the 1970s. Almost the entire country was tuning into the exact same shows, watching the exact same news anchors, and experiencing the exact same cultural moments, literally at the exact same time. It was a true monoculture.
But as you might guess, that absolute dominance just didn't last. That unified 90% grip, it plummeted. It dropped down to just 61% by the 1990 to 1991 season. That viewership pie, which used to be comfortably sliced just three ways, was suddenly carved up so incredibly thin that the original networks were genuinely fighting for their lives. So what exactly stole their audience? Section 2. The cable and VCR boom. These disruptors crashed into our living rooms in really rapid succession. Back in 1976, the Sony Betamax VCR changed the game entirely. Then came the highly specialized cable stations. You had CNN launching 24-hour news in 1980, followed right on its heels by MTV bringing nonstop music in 81, and by 1986, Rupert Murdoch's Fox network was directly challenging those big three. Almost overnight, American viewers had this unprecedented buffet of choices right at their fingertips.
And the VCR? Man, it wasn't just a cool new gadget. It completely revolutionized our viewing habits by introducing two massive cultural phenomena. First up was time shifting. This finally freed viewers from the absolute tyranny of primetime schedules, letting people watch whatever they wanted, literally whenever they wanted. And second was zapping, that amazing newfound power to just fast forward right past commercials. This actively struck at the very heart of the network's advertising lifeblood. It completely upended how money was made in television.
Section 3. The News Revolution. The CNN Effect. Now imagine the President of the United States learning about an international crisis not from a top-secret classified briefing, but from a live TV feed. This actually became known as the CNN Effect, and we saw its undeniable power in Somalia. Continuous, heartbreaking live footage of starving children directly pressured U.S. officials to intervene and send in troops. But then, later on, it was horrifying broadcast footage of violence against American soldiers that prompted a really rapid withdrawal. Think about that for a second. 24-hour news wasn't just reporting on foreign policy anymore, it was actively driving it.
And this continuous 24/7 broadcast loop had massive, massive global impacts. Policymakers suddenly found themselves discovering global trouble spots via cable television instead of their own intel briefings. World leaders started using these public channels to shoot messages directly to one another. And, rather chillingly, America's enemies realized they could completely bypass traditional media filters to distribute propaganda on a global scale. The sheer speed of information had totally rewritten the rules of diplomacy.
Section 4. Fueling the Partisan Divide.
So, to attract these highly specific, fragmented audiences, networks started utilizing two very distinct tools: gatekeeping and issue framing. Gatekeeping is pretty straightforward. It simply filters out stories that don't support a desired political ideal. Issue framing, on the other hand, dictates exactly how a story is constructed. For instance, researchers point back to the 2008 election, noting how certain networks aggressively framed stories around vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin's character rather than her actual policy experience. The whole goal is constructing a tailored reality to just keep the viewer watching. To keep people hooked in this fiercely competitive landscape, networks also pivoted heavily to what political communications scholar Matthew Baum calls soft news. Basically, this means ditching dry, complex public policy discussions and trading them in for highly sensationalized presentations. By emphasizing super dramatic subjects like crime or natural disasters, networks grab your attention, validate your specific political biases, and keep you emotionally engaged, even if, you aren't actually becoming any better informed.
And the ultimate consequence of all this endless choice? Echo chambers. As University of Chicago law professor Cass Sunstein perfectly sums it up,
media consumers will select only the outlets that they find the most comfortable or familiar. When we're deprived of an opposing view, the public is inevitably pulled toward extreme, uncompromising polarization. Modern politicians picked up on this really quickly, adapting to this splintered reality. They figured out they no longer need to speak to the mass public to build a broad coalition. Instead, they leverage these tailored platforms to speak directly to highly specific special interest groups. And we see this across the entire political spectrum. Whether it's Donald Trump focusing messaging on an anti-immigration base or Bernie Sanders targeting voters experiencing economic dissatisfaction, politicians can now basically bypass the general public entirely to speak straight to their most fervent supporters. Section 5. The Rise of the MTV Generation. Now let's switch gears a bit. MTV's launch in 1981 was an absolute watershed cultural moment. Before this, music videos existed merely as secondary, kind of cheap promotional tools, but MTV turned the music video into the primary entertainment vehicle itself. It was a massive, fundamental shift in visual style. Artists could no longer just drop a great pop record, they had to build a complete visual identity, which permanently altered pop culture forever. This actually cultivated an entirely new demographic, the MTV generation. Researchers found that these viewers possessed incredibly high-speed information processing skills, yet they also harbored a pretty deep sense of cynicism and uncertainty. They were deeply influenced by global brands, and honestly, most importantly, they ushered in a highly visual-oriented society. Multinational marketers took note of this immediately, and they adapted their global practices to capture this totally new, media-obsessed youth audience. Section 6. Our Segmented Visual Society. So, wrapping all this up, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought to deeply consider the next time you turn on your favorite channel or scroll through a curated newsfeed or watch a targeted algorithmic video. In an era where we have the incredible, unprecedented power to choose exactly what we see and hear, are we the ones consuming the media, or is the media actually consuming us? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.